and welcome to the March 20th, 2023 meeting of the City of Pacifica Planning Commission. This meeting is called to order. May I please have a roll call?
Commissioner Devine.
Present.
Commissioner Ferguson.
Present.
Commissioner Godwin.
Present.
Vice Chair Hauser.
Present.
Commissioner Leal.
Present.
Commissioner Wright.
Here.
Okay. Commissioner Ferguson, can you please lead us in a salute to the flag?
Of course.
Thank you. All right, before we get into administrative business, any member of the public wishing to make public comment on this agenda item or on any agenda item should complete a speaker card and bring it to the front and hand it to staff. On the card, please indicate the agenda item number on which you wish to comment upon or oral communications for items not on the agenda. There is also a dial-in option for making public comment. The phone number is 650-898-6965. Once dialed in, enter conference number 383-609-442 and then press the pound key. Once the chair has announced the public comment opportunity for the item on which you wish to comment, press star 5 to raise your hand. City staff will then identify you by the last 4 digits of your phone number when it is your turn to speak. Once identified for your turn to speak, press star 6 to unmute yourself. Wait a few seconds and then begin speaking. Be sure to mute any other broadcast you may be watching, such as Channel 26 or the live stream. Also, dial-in instructions are shown on the screen. I will call each speaker, whether in person or by dial-in, for their public comment opportunity. We're going to move on to administrative business now. Before we start administrative business, does anyone have a public comment on the administrative business? Are there any public comments on the phone for the administrative business?
There are no callers at the time.
Okay, seeing none, we shall move on. And we'll start with approval of order of the agenda. Can I please get a motion for approval of the order of the agenda? Commissioner Wright. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Ferguson?
I move we approve the order of agenda as noted.
I'll second.
Okay, please vote.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay, we have no approval of minutes tonight, and we're currently listed as no designation of liaison to city council meeting. Is that still correct, Mr. Murdoch?
Correct.
Fabulous. Okay. And moving on to oral communications, this portion of the agenda is available to the public to address the Planning Commission on any issue within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission that is not on the agenda. The time allowed for any speaker will be 3 minutes. I have no speaker cards at this time. We'll give everybody a second here. Are there anyone wishing to speak on items that are not on the agenda? Okay. Any callers by phone wishing to speak during oral communications?
We have no callers.
Okay. So moving on, that'll take us to consent items, which are none, and then to new public hearings. So the first item tonight, item 1, is file number 2020-009, rezoning RZ-205-20, development plan DP81-20, development agreement DA-3-20, specific plan SP-173-20, subdivision SUB-24820, and heritage tree removal authorization to authorize the subdivision of 1 parcel into 3 separate parcels and construction of 7 multifamily residential buildings with a total of 70 residential housing units, including 11 housing units of affordable at below market rate or BMR rents, residential amenity buildings, off-street parking and circulation improvements, open space and landscaping, and recreational fields and amenities at the former Odstad Elementary School located at 930 Odstad Boulevard. May we please have a staff report?
Thank you, Chair Hauser. Contract Planner Chris Dakamus will make the staff presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, Chair Hauser and honorable commission members. The item that the Planning Commission is considering tonight is the Pacifica School District Workforce Housing Project located at 930 Outside Boulevard. So there's two sets of main objectives tonight that the Planning Commission is considering. Both the approval of the project and the certification of the project, and then also making a recommendation to the City Council on legislative items. So the legislative items include the development agreement, rezoning from single-family residential to planned development, and the development plan, which provides the development standards and regulations for the proposed project. The project location is situated off of Odstead Boulevard between Big Bend and Yosemite Drive to the east and west, respectively. It's at the foot of Frontierland Park. Consists of 12.46 acres. Is in the Park Pacifica neighborhood. Has a current general plan land use designation low-rise residential, which includes densities of 3 to 9 units per acre. Currently, the project site has buildings that are vacant that were formerly a school. So the project site was acquired by the school district in 1965 and was operated until 2005 as a school. The school was closed due to declining enrollment and newer facilities that were built within Pacifica. From 2005 to 2019, the buildings were used by the school district as additional storage, but since 2019, the buildings have been vacant. Part of the objective of the applicant in having this project is to attract employees and retain employees within Pacifica due to the rising costs of living and especially the cost of housing. The residential units will be subsidized by the school district and also includes 11 below market rate units. So here's it should actually say Lot 2. Lot 1 is the playing fields, which is over to the left, and Lot 2 consists of 45 units of proposed development. The staff report for the lot area per dwelling unit provided the average of 70 units across both sites, but instead this table here provides the accurate minimum lot area per dwelling unit for Lot 2, and this is it for Lot 3. So this provides an overview of the site plan and how it will be divided into 3 separate lots. Lot 1 consists of playing fields and also 52 parking spaces, which would be available to the public to support the playing field use. Also within the parking lot, it would be striped for playing basketball. Lots 2 and Lot 3 is pretty much the focus of the project, which is to develop 70 units across these 2 lots, with 45 units built on Lot 2 and 25 units built on Lot 3. Ideally, the applicant would like to construct all 70 units in one phase, but part of the reason why it's split into 2 lots is to take into consideration that the project may have to be phased and also to take in some potential strategies for financing the project. Overall, the buildings would be constructed in craftsman style to mimic and to be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. None of the residential buildings exceed 2 stories in height, and none exceed 30 feet either. The project also includes a public facility which has restrooms and changing facilities, and then also a kiosk that could be available to the public on game days to support the field use. So this building, the residence commons, and the project management building all are 1 story. This is a perspective rendering of the architectural style of the proposed development. It's the same site and location. However, the picture above shows what the project would look like with the existing trees remaining, which the applicant proposes. And just to provide what the architectural style looks like, they remove the trees just to provide that perspective on this bottom picture. current zone, so the applicant requests rezoning to rezone the project from R1 to planned development, which would provide site-specific standards for the project away from the single-family residential zoning designation that it currently is. Additionally, the planned development also allows the applicant to have more flexibility in terms of the open space that's provided, whereas under R1, it would have had to be provided per unit, for each unit. And under the planned development, they could provide open space for all tenants throughout the project. Additionally, the applicant is requesting a development agreement, and so the development agreement will provide both benefits to the applicant, to the city, and then there's some shared benefits. The benefits that would benefit the applicant would be to vest the development rights of the for the project for 15 years, and this would mean that the current land use regulations would govern the site for those 15 years. Additionally, the rezoning is included as part of the development agreement. For benefits to the city, the applicant would construct all BMR units within the first phase of the project, ensuring that these units are available as soon as possible. And then also the sealing and restriping of the parking lot for the basketball courts and to improve the lot. The benefits that would be shared between the two parties to the agreement, the city and the school district, involve the playing fields. So 1.4 acres of the 4.9 acres of Lot 1 would be dedicated to the city after a 20-year term. The remaining playing fields would be available for use to the city over that 20-year term. And then the development agreement specifies specific situations in which the school district could use the land after that 20 years, but it would still have to have some sort of public use for it. The due to the nature of this project, environmental impact report was prepared. It was kicked off in 2021 and found many impacts that could be mitigated and and are involved in the mitigation monitoring and reporting program. And there is one significant and unavoidable impact for vehicle miles traveled as a result of the scenario in which the project was evaluated. But the city may approve the project still by finding that there's no feasible way to lessen or avoid the significant impact and to consider the public benefits from the project that they outweigh the significant environmental impacts of the project set forth in the statement of overriding conditions. So tonight, before the Planning Commission, staff recommend that the Planning Commission certify that FEIR adopt the MMRP and make the required findings to approve the statement of overriding considerations, approve the development permits, and recommend to City Council approval of legislative items. Thank you.
Chair Hauser, if I may, good evening, Commissioners, Planning Director Christian Murdoch. I did want to mention 3 points. First, that we have our consultants who prepared the environmental impact report here this evening, Olivia Irvin and Crystal Rizzi, to answer any technical questions with respect to the environmental review. As it pertains to the development agreement, I did want to ask that whatever consideration the Commission may give to approving the project tonight and recommending approval of the development agreement to the City Council, that they also grant staff authority to add a provision into the development agreement that was not included. It was inadvertently omitted. As Mr. Dakamis mentioned, we have negotiated with the school district to construct all of the required below market rate housing units under the city's inclusionary zoning ordinance in phase 1, even though some of those units are attributable to the 25 units in phase 2. So it's a public benefit that would accrue to the city and to the community by getting all of the units up front in phase one. But we inadvertently omitted mention of that in the development agreement, so we would ask for permission to add that in language to be ironed out between the city and the PSD before going to city council. And then lastly, do also want to clarify a point as part of the commission's consideration this evening, that any action to recommend approval of the project for the legislative items and to approve the vesting tentative parcel map also include support and recommendation of approval for the city to vacate any existing rights-of-way or easements that may remain beneath the project site. I can provide a visual at an appropriate time. I don't have it ready at this moment. But essentially, there are 4 cul-de-sacs from when this project site was originally subdivided. The city never constructed public streets there, and the school subsequently obtained ownership and constructed the school site. However, we do, in an abundance of caution, want to make sure that any authorization by the commission does find that that would be consistent with the general plan and recommends vacation of those public rights of way. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Murdoch, for these last 2 items, is there language specifically that staff is being asked to be placed into the motion?
We would prefer not to recommend the specific language of the insertion in the development agreement, but general language to direct staff to include in the development agreement the agreed provision that all BMR units would be constructed in phase 1. And I can repeat that again if and when the commission gets to a point where it may want to approve the project.
And is the city on the final point on vacating the right-of-ways and easements, is the city confident that all of the new easements that are proposed adequately replacing? So for example, the 4 rights-of-way very obviously would be vacated, but there's a 5-foot utility easement that goes along the property. The city has analyzed that everything that they still need is in the new final map.
That's correct. So the tentative subdivision map has undergone review by the city, and we are recommending approval of the tentative subdivision map.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on to public comment, do any commissioners have questions for staff or for M Group?
I have a bunch of questions.
Commissioner Wright.
I was just wondering if, at the time of original transfer of the deed to the school district, if there are any other deed restrictions besides the right-of-way?
I would need to locate the title report that we received for the project. I don't believe that we identified any that were material to this proposed project at this point in time.
Okay, and I think that's sufficient for this section, with the exception of one of my big concerns about stuff like this is what all of Pacifica's concerns are, and that has to do with traffic and our problem at Valamar. I understand that the environmental impact report states that it's not going to necessarily have an impact, but it doesn't look that far. Is there something that we can do in the future so that when we're considering projects like this, that analysis has actually been performed, going to the point where we all know the problem is?
So what I can say to that, Commissioner Wright, is this project is consistent with the adopted 2040 general plan in terms of land use density and intensity. And so to the extent that the number of units and whatever resulting traffic from this project, we're also feeding into other future projects contemplated in the general plan. Those impacts have been analyzed in terms of level of service in the general plan and disclosed to the community and ultimately the city council that adopted the general plan. If this were a project, for example, to change the general plan to allow 200 units instead of the 70 units that were anticipated, that would be a separate body of analysis that would need to be completed in order to determine consistency with general plan level of service standards, for example.
Thank you. That's enough for now. More to come.
Any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Ferguson.
Yeah, I had a clarification. I'm not sure whom this would be directed at. On the development agreement, it says that there is a vested right for the developer to develop under the adopted regulations for the term of 15 years. Does that is that opening the door for future development of the same site that's not covered in the scope of this project, or is that I'm reading between the lines, something that's not there?
This is not a routine component of most projects that the Planning Commission sees. Most are relatively small projects. It's common, but not, always the case that larger projects may include a development agreement. And one of the key components of a development agreement from the developer's perspective is the ability to have assurance that they can undertake the project without changes in zoning or the general plan
Got it.
that would complicate their ability to construct the project. Under the city's normal procedures, you may only get some assurance of that for a period of, let's say, 2 years with your permits only. This development agreement, among the other components, provides that assurance for a much longer period.
This is protecting them for 15 years to construct this project specifically.
This project specifically, or,
that is
a very minor change to that, exactly, but not some other unforeseen project that's not being proposed tonight.
Understood.
Any other questions before we move on to public comment? I have one question. I would just love to understand who from the applicant's team is here. And what I mean by that is the civil engineer here, the architect, like what level of design team?
I'm sorry, Chair Hauser, could you please repeat the question?
Sure. I'd love to understand who from the applicant's design team is here. So, is the civil engineer here, the architect? I'd just like to get more information.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the entirety of the applicant's team. I know that their main representative is here, and he can perhaps introduce his team members when that opportunity presents, to present the project is given.
Okay, that would be fantastic. So at this point, I think we can call the applicant up for their presentation. And I believe, Mr. Murdoch, correct me if I'm off base here, but I believe that there are 10 minutes for your presentation, but you can select to reserve up to 3 minutes for rebuttal if you would like to.
Okay, and I believe he has the slide deck.
Yeah, Chair Hauser, I'll need just another moment to load the school district's presentation. I apologize.
Sure. And would you like to reserve any of your time for rebuttal, or?
No, I don't think so. Whatever time we have left. I will be turning over partway to our developer. I have the slide deck.
Okay, I found it, thanks.
Will you be controlling the slides? Will you be controlling the slides?
Thanks.
Oh,
There we go. Thank you for your patience.
Okay. All right, good evening. My name is Elizabeth Berdal, and I have been a resident of Pacifica for 34 years, raised 3 children who attended Cabrillo School, and I'm serving my 3rd term, 9th year, as a trustee on the school board. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay. The challenge, I have watched as the struggle of attracting new teachers becomes more difficult every year. The cost of housing and rent in the Bay Area is causing great concern for our ability to serve our children in the future. Too often, when we offer a position to a new recruit, they are excited about moving to Pacifica, but then have to turn down the position because of the cost of living. Many of our young teachers that grew up in Pacifica and are devoted to our school district end up living in their childhood home so they can stay in the community they love. Quality teachers and staff are key to the educational mission of the Pacifica School District. The process. I've been involved in the community conversations about repurposing Odstad Elementary for the past 8 years. Mike O'Neill helped surplus the property years before that, with the hope of it being used in the future in a more useful and innovative way. We strongly believe that the plan presented here tonight will best serve not only the school community, but also the Pacifica community. This is the product of years of intense study and feedback from the Pacifica residents and our school district employees. The plan. It is important that we craft the best solution we can to meet the needs of our whole community, and we feel that 930 Odstad, reimagined as workforce housing, will serve this greater purpose. Okay. And as you can see in the timeline, the Odstad Elementary closed in 2005, 2017. We ended up with Brookwood Advisors and Hart providing the pre-construction financing. And since then, we have been working to reimagine the 70 residences. Now, we ended up with a public outreach. We did a city session, district staff review, and 3 public open houses. There have been citywide postcard mailings, door hangers to all fence line neighbors, and e-blasts to 6,000 parents. Our in-person open house, attended by 87 attendees who completed surveys, asked questions, and provided us with valuable comments and input. I will now turn it over to Shep Heary from Brookwood Advisors.
Thank you, Elizabeth. My name is Shepard Heary. I'm the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Brookwood Group. We're delighted to be here presenting to you this evening and have enjoyed working with the city and have really been honored to work with the school district to help this project along. We do have some of our team here this evening. The design architect is Alex Seidel. I believe he's attending by phone or remotely. Also attending remotely is Leah Farley of Jet Landscape Architecture. We have Ian Murphy and Brock Eilers, who are with BDE Architecture, the production architect for the project. I believe BKF Engineers is also attending in the person of Tim Heffernan. So I hope that answers your question. We also have folks from Hexcel who are the transportation consultants, and they can answer any questions you might have. But let's see if I can work this. What happened? Okay, there we go. So I think you've seen the plan, but this is the arrangement. The project consists of 2 apartment buildings and a total of 5 townhome buildings. The townhome buildings are located closer to the street, and they consist of 2 and 3 bedroom units. The apartments consist of 1 and 2 bedroom units. At least 64% of the units will be below market rate, or focus on the workforce housing, and we hope that actually we can build all 100% of the units for that purpose, but we have to make sure we finalize our financing before we can make that commitment. As Chris mentioned, we are preserving the playing fields, and we'll show you some images of that in just a moment, but that's a public amenity that we think is very important and support. Excuse me. One thing we're doing in addition to preserving the playing fields is improving the drainage and adding a basketball practice court. It's a shared use facility with the upper parking lot that exists there now. We'll be resealing that lot and making those improvements. And then, as you see on the lower image, on the lower right-hand side here, this is a building which is focused on the community use of the project. So it has changing rooms, restrooms. It has a small snack kiosk that can be used for teams that having a social event after the game. And so I think it's a very nice facility that will be available to the public under terms and conditions that are defined in the development agreement. The project is low-rise. It's 2 stories at most, and so we've tried to make it very consistent with the feeling and scale of the neighborhood. We also are working hard to preserve the trees that are existing along the street front. Some of these images have the trees removed so that you can see the project, but actually it'll be behind the trees in most cases, as shown here. This is the project that we hope to save all these Monterey cypress and Monterey pines that are on the site. Here's a view from Yosemite Drive looking across the playing fields, and you can see the scale of the project, I think, fits in very nicely with the community. At the entrance to the project, the vehicular entrance to the project, there will be a property management office. That's shown in the center of this image. It will have facilities for receiving mail and basically the property management functions for the on-site property manager and serving the community, the residents. The building in the center of this image is the residence commons, and so this building is primarily for the use of residents of the project, although it will be made available under terms that we've agreed to with the city for occasional use by the city or community groups. But it's basically a residence lounge, and then behind it to the left you can see the building that serves the playing fields. I must be doing something wrong here. There we go. This is another view of the building that serves the playing fields, and I think we have a few shots that are taken at dusk or toward the end of the day. Here's another view from an overview, and you can see that we have photovoltaic panels on the structures that shade the parking spaces for the apartment buildings. The schedule is something we've been working at for quite a long time. We've worked very intensely over the last year with the city, and that's been a great relationship. We've had a very collaborative approach, I believe. We actually have completed now design development phase drawings, and I have a set here if anybody wants to peruse them. We will hopefully move into construction document phase in the months ahead, and also begin to establish a rapport with the building department to make sure we're complying with their requirements. We also are beginning to work very effectively on the project financing. We don't know exactly what form that will take, but we have a number of different ideas that we're pursuing, and I think all very credible. We expect to contract for the project, actually separate different contracts for the abatement of the existing building, the demolition of the existing building, and then the construction. So I think my time is up, and I just want to say that our team is available to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Before we move on to public comment, any questions for the applicant? We can also reserve them until after
I will
public
reserve
comment.
till after.
Okay, let's do that. All right. So we're now going to take public comment. Oh, thank you. I was wondering where the speaker cards were. There are a lot of you in the audience. I want to remind folks that are on the phone or folks who are watching who would like to dial in that the phone number to call is 650-898-6965. Once dialed in, enter number 383-609-442, and then press the pound key. Now is the time to press *5 to raise your hand. City staff will identify you by the last 4 digits of your phone number when it is your turn to speak. Once identified for your turn to speak, press *6 to unmute yourself. I will remind folks again when we go to callers on the phone, but we will start with people in the room. So the first person here is Gail Benton Shoemaker, and following Gail will be Matthew Levy.
Hello, my name is Gail Benton Shoemaker, and I have lived in Pacifica for 33 years. Both my children attended school at the Pacifica School District. I am a strong supporter of teacher workforce housing on Odstead Boulevard. In the past, I was executive director of Pacifica School Volunteers for over a decade. During that time, I saw significant turnover, particularly with first-year teachers. Some of this was definitely due to living expenses, particularly the difficulty of finding affordable housing in Pacifica. This turnover was hard on the schools, hard on the children, and hard on the volunteers. I support affordable teacher housing to keep teachers in Pacifica. I also support the teacher housing on Odstead Boulevard as a member of Tree City Pacifica. The landscaping plan shows an addition of 50 trees to the site. Trees combat climate change and increase property values. The addition of trees will beautify the neighborhood and will help Pacifica meet canopy goals. The school district also commits to tree protection plans for 20 of the existing trees. Although the arborist report was written in 2020 and does not reflect the current protected tree ordinance adopted last year, I'm certain that the school district will comply with the new ordinance and all the current requirements for existing trees, including the 2-to-1 replacement ratio for any trees removed. Please support this workforce housing on Odstead Boulevard. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Matthew Levy, followed by Carolyn Frederick.
Good evening. My name's Matthew Levy. I'm a former PSD board member, and I was on the board at the time this project was initiated. Since I stepped off the board, I've been a member of the district's Workforce Housing Committee, and I live a few blocks from the site. So this project is very important to me. I have been to community meetings, I have been to charrettes, I have been to meetings where the finances and the aesthetics and all of the aspects of this project have been discussed. I think it's a very, very good project. It brings many, many benefits to Pacifica. It will transform a vacant site and an eyesore into attractive housing. It will provide affordable housing for PSD staff, which will allow the district to attract and retain a talented workforce. It will improve the education of Pacifica's children by helping the district attract those teachers and other employees. It will keep the soccer fields, improve them, and add community amenities that the community would really appreciate. It will help Pacifica meet its housing commitment. I want to commend the Pacifica School Board, the district staff, and the contractors who have worked very, very hard to understand the community's desires and needs and integrate those into the project. This was the right project back then, and it's the right project now, and I ask you to approve all of the items before you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. All right, Caroline Frederick, followed by Michelle Gray.
Hello, I'm Caroline Frederick, and I'm here to represent my coworkers who aren't here. I work for the classified part of the district, so I'm not a teacher. I actually work as a behaviorist with the special needs children. It's been really difficult trying to work in the district and live here. I have 3 children who have all gone through the district. I very much have wanted to stay here and live here because of my kids. But we have moved probably every 2 years trying to find affordable housing. So it's been rough. So I am for this project because it would be really great personally, but also, you know, it's hard to see really good coworkers go because they aren't able to stay. So that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Michelle Gray, followed by Catherine Walkfler.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Gray. I've been a resident for 17 years, which I know does not seem like a very long time considering Pacifica standards. My husband and I, we have 2 great children in the school district right now. We moved to Pacifica for specific reasons, and fulfilling this project is going to help make sure those reasons stay true. I'm also honored to be the PTO president for Ingrid B. Lacey, our middle school here in Pacifica, and I've been very involved with field upgrade work with the school district across a couple of the schools. I can't echo enough the need to really make sure we can attract and retain high-quality teachers. Even if you don't have kids in school anymore, I think you understand and can appreciate that a community is stronger when we have a great school district. And so this is a real challenge for us. And this is not a challenge that's going to go away. The challenge is only going to get harder and more severe for us to rise to and meet. I appreciate all the opportunities that have been presented for the public to come in and provide input, in particular for one of the open house days. I thought it was great to come in and actually look through all the different plans, engage with the architects and engineers, and really talk about what this is going to look like, right? It's very sort of up in the air, but when you start to see some of the pictures coming true, when you start to walk the grounds with the people, and they point out when things are going to happen. So I appreciate the amount of effort that was put into allowing the community to come in and provide some input. In particular, I was very focused on the field. And so that's one field that's used quite a bit by a great recreation soccer program we have here, AYSO. So in their fall season, they have about 800 to 1,000 kids that are in this one program, which is outstanding. And we want to keep that up. And the Odsted field is critical for that, the success of that program. They also use the field for lots of camps in the spring and in the summertime, but the field needs work. And this project is going to help make sure that work is done. We also need to make sure that Pacifica is a destination, right? We always see people kind of driving through, and we want people to come here. And so the ability to have tournaments at that field is great. We bring people into Pacifica for a day or two. And that community building is essential for that, right? Having restrooms that are open, having a nice changing area, having the ability to sell snacks and sweatshirts and things like that. So there's a lot of real bonuses both for Pacifica, but certainly for the school district, and I want to urge you to approve this, and I thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, Catherine Walkler, followed by Chris Redfield.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Catherine Walkler, and I'm speaking before you tonight to urge you to recommend the proposed workforce housing project to the Pacifica City Council. I'm a 25-year resident of the neighborhood of the project. I live just up the hill on Yosemite Drive. I've also been an educator for the past 30 years in a nearby public high school district, and I am all too familiar with the difficulty many public high school teachers and staff in San Mateo County have with affordable local housing. My husband is a public school educator as well, and we raised our 2 daughters in Pacifica. Many of their Ocean Shore school teachers lived in Pacifica and even in our own neighborhood while our children attended school there. The lessons they were learning in the classroom extended well beyond the construct of the buildings because my children and their classmates interacted with their teachers and staff in the community. The modeling these students experienced was both pervasive and enriching. This project will allow that practice that my family experienced to continue. New teachers and staff members especially need support to establish themselves in communities in the communities in which they work. And this project will be a substantial piece of that support. The Pacifica School District, the Board of Trustees, and the Workforce Housing Team have done an awesome job on their homework, and they get gold stars all around for creating what they have, and they've been really great at effectively informing and including the neighbors in the area with all parts of this project. I'm super excited to see this project progress to this point. But I have to say, I'm really anxious for it to continue to quickly being built. Please recommend this project to the Pacifica City Council for approval, and I thank you very much for your time and your commitment to our community.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, Chris Redfield, followed by Kai Martin, and that is the last speaker card I have.
Good evening, staff and commissioners. Chris Redfield. I say it's encouraging to see this project make forward progress. The prospect of reusing underutilized, neglected, and essentially abandoned properties no longer needed for their initial purpose is literally refreshing. No, I'm not speaking of the quarry. I fully support the vision of PSD workforce housing on the site. While the demolition of the school will be somewhat bittersweet, as all three of my kids and nephew graduated from Odstad, with my daughter being the last class before it closed, it will bring much needed local housing for teachers and staff. I fully support the recommendations of staff to certify the final EIR, including subdivision, rezoning, and other recommended actions. I'm confident the council, dry mouth, will approve the legislative items when reviewed. I look forward to a vibrant housing development while enhancing and retaining public recreational use. The two can peacefully coexist. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. All right, Kai Martin.
Hello, Commission. Kai Martin. I've been a resident for about 9 years. My wife's been here a little bit longer than I have. And I have 2 kids, 5 and 7, that are in the school district right now. We go to Ortega. We live on Terra Nova Boulevard. And you've heard so many great things. I don't even know how I can add on to all those pieces. But I just wanted to echo also my support. I do lead the engagement with the Pacifica School District with the Tree City Pacifica program. As Ms. Ben Schumacher mentioned, we're very supportive of the school district's plan for the trees. It does need some amendment with the latest changes with the ordinances around the trees, but generally, good stuff. And just, personal note, my kid's teacher last year, she was, teaching kindergarten, a real estate agent, and renting just to try and live here. And Pacific School District, I think, has the lowest pay of any teachers in any of San Mateo County school districts. So we have to do something. It's imperative to be creating a place where our teachers and staff can actually be here and be with us, and we can attract talented people. So I urge you to please accept these pieces, put some provisions if you need to, but really to approve it and move it forward. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kai. All right. Does anyone else wish to speak before we move on to the phone? Okay. So reminder to folks dialing in, the dial-in number is 650-898-6965. The conference ID is 383-609-442. Press star 5 to raise your hand, and when staff calls on you, please press star 6 to unmute. Do we have any callers by phone?
Vice Chair Hauser, excuse me, we do have 2 callers, but no raised hands.
Okay. We'll give everyone about 10 more seconds. All right. With that, we will move on. I believe the applicant had 1 more minute, although with all of those comments, I'm not sure you want a rebuttal, but if you do, you're welcome to come up. Okay, with that, we will close the public comment and close the public hearing. So I think maybe we can start with commissioner questions before we move on to deliberation. I know, Commissioner Wright, you had some, so I don't know if you'd like to kick us off.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Perhaps the architects might be a good person for me to direct some of these questions to. I was wondering what green infrastructure has been incorporated into this project. Do we have solar panels, for example? Do we have purple pipe for irrigation? Do we have any kind of gray water system? Do we have a rainwater collection system with a big cistern to collect that water and repurpose that? Could you speak to some of those kind of considerations, please?
Yes, absolutely. My name is Ian Murphy with BDE Architecture, the production architect. We are utilizing solar panels. We plan to place them on the carports or the covered parking along the back. So all of the parking is pulled to the back, so it's hidden and then covered, and all of that will have solar panels on it that serve the entirety of the project. There is a stormwater plan that involves a number of bioswales and on-site retention naturally. We are planning to use, all low to no VOC materials on the project that have minimal to no off-gassing, highly sustainable materials. We'll be using Energy Star appliances and low energy use appliances. I think that if you look at the direction California code is going, especially with the new cycle that was initiated this year, it's quite progressive, and we'll, just by following that, actually have quite a few, advancements in the sustainability compared to any other recent project.
Will they be all-electric kitchens, for example? Will they be induction ranges? Will they use natural gas? Will they be on-demand hot water heaters? Any of those kind of considerations? Any kind of solar preheating of the water?
We're not evaluating solar preheating, but we most likely will have all-electric kitchens. We're still working on the construction documents and finalizing some of the systems.
And I'm sorry, but did you speak to whether you had purple pipe available to you or not?
I don't believe so. I don't think we're doing any purple pipe or water reuse in that way. Not to that site.
Okay, great. That's good for that piece.
Thank you.
Chair Hauser, I hope to clarify as well, the project will be subject to the 2022 California Building Code, and that would include local amendments made by the City of Pacifica, which would include the requirement for all new buildings to be electric only, and so the kitchens would not have gas pursuant to that requirement.
I'd be willing to let somebody else ask a question, or I'm happy to continue.
I think you should just keep going.
Okay, let's see. One big question I have is, what happens if the project gets upside down on the financing and the bank forecloses on it? What happens? Does some other developer come in? Are there going to be deed restrictions on there so that we maintain our below market rates, that is still teacher housing regardless of what happens? Those kind of cement truck considerations.
Yes, the development agreement will be recorded against the real property, so it will act as a deed restriction. In addition, there are 11 BMR units that will be required to be constructed, and there will also be an affordable housing covenant that is recorded against the real property to ensure the construction of those units. The development agreement does allow the ability to assign the agreement, which would include, the development rights. However, that typically is, and in this case, requires the consent of the city for an assignment. There also is, within the development agreement, mortgagee protection language. So any, for example, lender that forecloses on the property would have the ability to construct the project, but would have to comply with all of the conditions in the development agreement in order to do so, because the development agreement is recorded against the property, as is the affordable housing covenant for the BMR units. Those would remain in effect.
In the event it was a short sale, would the city have right of first refusal to be able to buy that? Or could we put that in the agreement, or is that just asking too much?
That currently is not in the agreement. If there is a foreclosure, the city could always pursue purchasing it from the school district, but that currently is not a term in the agreement.
Okay, thank you. One more quick question. During the construction phase, is this going to be built with union labor? Is it going to be built with not necessarily locally produced, but United States goods, for example? Those kind of considerations that you hear a lot of people talking about these days. And in terms of the management and the ongoing maintenance, is that also going to be done by union labor, similar to what happens in the school district now, if it is going to be a school district project?
That is not addressed in the development agreement, but perhaps the applicant can address that question.
Yes, it will be prevailing wage, not necessarily union.
And for both phases, the build phase and the maintenance phase?
Yes.
Thank you. There was also some mention of the fields and some mention of what was going to be done to improve them. Are they going to remain grass fields? Is there going to be any lighting put on there to extend the time of day use since we have such a shortage? Is it going to be like the San Bruno project where they're actually turfing the field for them? Who's going to pay for the water? Who's going to take care of cutting the grass? Who's going to maintain it?
The project will be responsible for maintaining it.
The who?
The project, the project entity, whatever it is, it will have that responsibility for maintenance, which is basically the school district. But on the phone, we have both the landscape architect and the civil engineer who might speak to the nature of the field improvements.
So will it be turfed? Will it not be
It will
turfed?
be natural turf.
Natural turf?
Yes.
Okay, even though that's a perpetual water expense ad infinitum.
There's certainly been an issue with the field having drainage issues, so maybe Tim Heffernan could speak to that issue on the phone.
I would like to hear a little bit more about what some of those improvements are.
Sure. How does Tim do that?
If the civil engineer's on the phone, he should press the button to raise his hand. Give me a second to confirm what that button is. I don't remember offhand. So that'd be *5. So, Mr. Heffernan, if you're on the phone, press *5.
While we're waiting for that, I might be able to squeeze in one more quick question.
Sure.
Did you guys do an analysis to see if there was any financial advantage to you to lease the land to a developer and not be responsible for the ongoing maintenance, not be responsible for the build, but still collect?
We did look at that early on. We also looked at the possibility of having a developer handle the whole process for us, and we got pretty far down the road with an entity that would have helped to do that, but they actually withdrew from the negotiations. That was Bridge Housing. So we did look at the developer approach both at risk and also as a fee development.
And at the time that you were pursuing that down the road, did it seem like that was the best option, or did that seem like it was a close call, or was it out of the question?
In the case of development management, it turned out not to be a viable option, and we didn't have any, I think, credible expressions of interest from at-risk developers.
Okay, and does anybody in your group have any experience with large-scale residential
Yes.
development and ongoing management? Residential development.
We don't have as much experience in ongoing management, but we have a tremendous amount of experience in development of high-rise, mid-rise, and residential, and also student housing projects. We've done projects all over the state and actually all over the nation. So.
Okay, thank you. Did we hear from the?
Yes, caller ending with 3481, I have allowed you to unmute yourself. You can press *8.
If Tim is not available to answer the question, maybe Leah Farley could try that.
I'm sorry, it's *6. So caller 3481, if you press *6, you should be able to speak.
Oh, there we go. You guys should hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, this is Tim Heffernan with BKF for the Civil Engineers. And regarding the drainage of the field, there are a couple approaches. There were different diagnoses that we've heard over the design process, and one was irrigation failures, so we would definitely look at fixing some of the irrigation lines if that is the cause. But one of the ones right off the bat was fixing the drainage ditch, the concrete drainage ditch at the toe of the existing slope. So we feel that was allowing a lot of the drainage from the hillside to seep through and get into the field and saturate the field even after rain events. So by fixing the drainage ditch, which is under disrepair and is disjointed and not allowing water to flow out to Yosemite, we would fix that, and that would alleviate, in our opinion, quite a bit of the sogginess in that corner of the field.
Is that all the proposed changes and improvements to the field that you're considering?
Tim,
From a drainage perspective, that's the first, but it is one of those iterative, could be an iterative process. If that is not the cause of some of the drainage concerns, then we would look at explore other options.
So the field will be left in a playable condition with a smooth, relatively even surface.
That's the intent, yes.
Okay. Let's see, one other, during the construction process, it seems to me that there's going to be a ton of materials that are going to need to be staged and things to that effect. Is the contemplation that you're going to use the existing parking lots that serve these fields that are going to be continued to be in use, or are you considering using that playing space during the construction project? Because if you're building in the middle first, where are you going to put all the stuff, and are you going to impact that community use during the construction project?
There probably will be, pardon me, go ahead.
And additionally, when you're doing, we've all seen building projects that grow out into the street with putting all kinds of things. Are you going to limit yourself to only taking up the parking in front of your project site as opposed to expanding out even another lane? And
We will consult with the general contractors with whom we take bids. I don't anticipate a lane closure need. I do anticipate that there will be some use of Lot 1 for staging and storage. It depends upon whether or not we proceed with phases 1 and 2 at the same time. If we don't, the phase 2 portion of the site could conceivably be used for staging and storage. But I don't want to make a commitment about the use or non-use of Lot 1 for construction, because we haven't really had those detailed conversations yet with general contractors who might build it. We will certainly work to minimize the disruption to Lot 1.
And would you consider turfing the field or putting up lights for the field to extend the playing time? Would you consider putting in a pickleball court in addition to the basketball
I'll have to
court?
defer to my client on that question.
Hi, I'm Heather Olson, Superintendent, and in terms of the question, would we consider turfing? We are going to do a turf field at Ortega Field, which is about 0.8 of a mile away, and that's about $5 million. So we had not seriously considered turfing of that field. We also think that the natural element of that is very desirable for both the residents as well as the neighbors. So that was our interest. We had not seriously thought about adding lights to that, again, because it's in a residential neighborhood. And there was not that much interest in terms of a lot of interest during the day, but not necessarily people asking for lights at night.
Okay. And the pickleball court?
Excuse me, I didn't hear.
A pickleball court?
Pickleball, well, when we started this project, pickleball was not the rage, and now it is. So we do have the basketball court. That was an interest. It seems like pickleball with a temporary net could be a possibility for the parking lot.
Would you consider talking to Parks and Rec to see if perhaps you guys could work together to maybe turf the field, or is that just too much of an ask?
Again, we are working closely with the city, and if that was their interest in doing that, again, I think that the piece of keeping it as a natural turf field was around making sure that the rain had a place to go, and because we are doing the field.
Was that before the drought, though?
Yes, yes. Although, if you read, there are certainly some water considerations on that field, but because we are doing the field only 0.8 of a mile up as a natural turf field. That was why we didn't seriously consider that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And for the gentleman that spoke earlier, I read in the documents that the infrastructure won't be overused. Maybe it's for the architects is a better question in terms of the city has, or maybe even the city, we have sufficient wastewater treatment, sufficient water supplies, sufficient PG&E, sufficient emergency medical response, sufficient fire, and sufficient police protection without adding additional burdens to those services?
I would again defer to Tim Heffernan, who's the civil engineer on the project. So if he could come back on the line, that'd be great. While he's connecting, we have gone through the due diligence of looking at all those issues, and I believe that there is adequate capacity. To the extent there's not, it's our responsibility to work with the city to make sure there is. But Tim should be able to answer more specifically.
Okay. And then the last thing I have is probably more of a question for Christian than anybody else. But in the considerations of the changing population curves, in the event that the eventuality is that things change and we have a lot more young ones like we currently have on my block, I assume that we have more than sufficient capacity with the existing schools that we have, and more than enough capacity in terms of field space that we're not limiting, because we are eliminating one field on the other side of that school for whatever future needs that one could contemplate.
So thank you, Commissioner Wright. I'll try to respond to several of the questions you asked in terms of capacity and sufficiency of services. So the environmental impact report, for one, analyzed a variety of public services and did not identify any deficiencies or additional facilities that would need to be constructed to meet the demands of the project. Specific to school capacity, which I believe is one of your questions, the state law provides that payment of school fees shall satisfy the requirements to assess, for the potential of school development. And so in this case, the project would pay school fees and therefore meet the requirement to provide for those potential school impacts in this case. So there's no identified need for additional infrastructure or public facilities. In addition, our police and fire departments have analyzed the project and had not identified any concerns with their ability to service the project.
And there would be no financial impact either, since we currently don't get property tax from the schools, and we're not going to get it in the future, so it's a break even.
Well, I think the potential exists for there to be a net positive to the extent that, there are market rate units, for example, or other units that are not subject to tax exemption. So the potential exists very much for there to be a net positive in terms of property tax collection.
Could the city attorney talk to the rules around the property tax for the market rate units, please?
Yes, with respect to the school housing that is set to be constructed, perhaps the school district could respond to that as well. I'm not sure whether there would be any exemptions depending on how they are financing and how the project is structured. But certainly if any portion of it does become your standard market rate housing that is not specifically owned by the school district, then that would certainly be subject to property taxes.
And believe it or not, that's all the questions I have at this time.
All right, thank you. Any other commissioners with questions? Commissioner Devine.
Thank you. I have two questions. First being that I read in the documents, correct me if I'm wrong, that if you so choose not to proceed with the second phase of development, that it could not happen. So that's correct. Okay. So then my follow-up question is, I have a deep curiosity about who is managing the market rate units and the units that are supposed to be designated for Pacifica School District teachers and/or employees. I'm noticing that a little under 65% of the entirety of the project, Phase 1 and 2, are supposed to go to those individuals. And I'm curious who's going to be on top of that.
So while we haven't gotten that far down the line, we would use the model that Jefferson Union High School District did, where they form an advisory board, and that advisory board sets out some bylaws and makes decisions in terms of how many would be, I think the district would work closely in terms of determining what percentage of them were subsidized. But in terms of managing the project, it would be managed by the advisory board with a property manager on site.
Okay, so in the case that Phase 2 were not to occur and Phase 1 were to proceed with the majority of those units going below market rate, is that still going to be a feasible financial
I mean, you
landscape?
just identified our biggest challenge is in order to build these and we don't want to build units that our staff can't move into, right? That are unaffordable for our staff. And so that is one of the reasons why we would think about at market rate units so that we could further subsidize the units that we offer to our staff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners have questions?
Just one more.
Really? You can go, we'll reserve you, we'll come back to you. Commissioner Godwin, did you have one?
Yes, I had one question. This is also for the school district. Getting into this venture of managing rental property is something new for the school district. It's something that a few other districts have tried recently, but not many. So let's say you lose interest in doing this or decide it's more difficult than you originally projected, and you'd like to sell the project or part of the project or radically change the way it is run. Is there some time limit before you could make those sort of decisions? What would be the impact on the city if you chose to divest yourself of this in a reasonable or in the timeframes that you have discussed?
I will answer that question as a superintendent, and then I would defer to Mr. Harry in terms of his experience in terms of residential real estate. As the superintendent, this is a great need for us, and I can't imagine why we would want to divest from this project. We don't have any intention of becoming the landlords of our employees. That would be a very difficult situation, and that's why you work with the establishing an advisory board that sets out the rules and the conditions and becomes the landlord. The project manager or the property manager would be the day-to-day interaction, but the advisory board would be the landlord. That would be just an incredibly difficult situation as an employer to also be someone's landlord. So that's kind of the school district version of that. As the residential property, I defer to Mr. Fury.
Well, I know that this district has no intention of, or at least they've indicated to me they have no intention of selling. And I think the education code does limit the extent to which, or even maybe prohibits the mortgaging of properties. There are financing facilities. One example is certificates of participation, which were used at Jefferson Union High School District to help finance that project. So I don't think that the district would be putting itself at risk of foreclosure. And then to answer your question about radical changes in attitude in the future, frankly, we haven't considered that because I don't think the district has any appetite for selling the land.
Anything else, Commissioner Godwin?
Nope, that's what I needed.
Commissioners Ferguson or Leal, anything from you? No?
Chair Hauser, I think I heard many ways part of Commissioner Godwin's question also to be somewhat related to the term of the agreement and would those obligations be ongoing. As City Attorney Murphy mentioned earlier, there is an assignment provision in the event that the district were to want to get out of the rental housing business in some fashion and actually seek to sell the property and be allowed to do so under the law, that there is a process for the city to consider the party to which the district is assigning it, and that they would continue to be bound by the obligations of the agreement for the term that remained at that point in time. So the benefits that the city is receiving as public benefits from the development agreement for approving the project would remain for the remaining term of the agreement, just as they would if the school district had owned it.
So that's the 15-year period of the development agreement?
So there are a few operative timelines, and so it's probably worth just summarizing them for clarity.
Oh, sure. I'm not asking you to read through the whole thing and.
No, but so the term of the overall agreement is 25 years. The term of guaranteed public access to the playing fields is 20 years. That can be shortened if the school district withdraws the part of the play field that's excess of the parkland requirement for a bona fide school use. And then there's the term in which they can proceed with the project under the current zoning and general plan, and that's 15 years. So those are sort of the three of the key timelines. There are other timelines, for instance, for construction of phase 1 and phase 2 within that initial 15-year term. But just want to be clear, the total term of the agreement would be 25 years, and there are other shorter terms for different particular aspects within that 25 years.
Thank you.
Would you like to ask your last question? Or your current last question?
Sure, but my list grew.
It what?
It grew.
It grew? Okay, well then maybe I'll go ahead and ask mine. I'm personally very excited to see this project. I've been excited about it for a while. I do have some questions that kind of range from M Group to the design team to city, so I'll try to cluster them, but apologies if they go out of order. So starting with M Group, on the MMRP, there are two biomitigations, Bio 1 and 2, about dusky-footed wood rats that seem to conflict with each other. And you already, so let me qualify that. The mitigations themselves don't seem to conflict, but I think it seems like you have the city and CDFW as the responsible party in mitigation 2, but only the city in Bio 1, and I think for consistency, it maybe was intended to say both, but I'd love for you guys to just double check.
Yeah, sure. Do I just push to talk? You can just. Okay. Hi, Commission. My name is Crystal Rizzi. So I think the intent of that was initially to provide the survey, and then if the survey, because they have to do the pre-construction survey regardless.
Right.
And then I think it would be, if they did find something, then they would do the relocation plan that CDFW would be a part of. However, I don't see an issue with just modifying it to include CDFW just to be on the safe side, just so to confirm survey protocols and that sort of thing.
I think that would make sense because you're establishing a buffer, so I think, okay. And then sticking in, I think this was a very well-written EIR. There are a couple of other ones. So in Bio 4, I would love for you guys to define the rainy season. So I don't know if that's like April 15th to, or October 15th to April 15th, or whatever it is, but I think that should be more clear for the applicant so that they're not confused when they're starting construction. And then one more in Bio 8. So this is the one that says a total of 0.063 acres of potential wetlands were identified. And then Bio 9 helps avoid impacts to those wetlands, or maybe it was Bio 7. But there's this, I just want to get a little bit of clarification on the wetland plants that could be removed. I want to understand how the wetland plants could be removed if the wetlands are being protected by the other mitigation.
Right, so that's referring to the modifications that they're going to be doing to the drainage ditch, and just
Got it.
given the adjacency, it may be that they damage or potentially remove them, and so in the event that those are damaged or removed, then they would need to be reestablished with native wetland plants just to make sure the wetland can.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that clarification. And then for staff, the resolution has the MMRP called out as Exhibit B, but it's not actually, it wasn't actually attached to the resolution. So I just want to make sure that in the final resolution, if things move forward, that the MMRP does get into the conditions.
That's right. We left placeholder pages for several of the exhibits to avoid confusion and to manage the length of the packet, but the MMRP, however it's finalized by the Planning Commission, would become a resolution, or would be in the final resolution as that exhibit.
Okay, thank you. And then this is also for probably for Mr. Murdoch. So I understand that there are 15% deed restricted below market rate homes. I'm wondering if, because there is no technical deed restriction on the workforce housing component, I'm wondering how that would impact our RENA and which categories it hits.
Excuse me. So you're correct. The project overall is 70 units. The city's inclusionary zoning ordinance requires 15% of projects of that size to be deed-restricted affordable housing units. That equates to 11 units. Our ordinance further specifies that not less than 50% of those shall be affordable to low-income individuals, and then the remainder may be affordable to moderate-income individuals. So the 6 units would be attributable to deed-restricted low-income housing in our annual progress report for our housing element. 5 of them would be deed-restricted moderate-income units. The remainder would either be above moderate income units, or if we were able to obtain information that the district was renting them for some other lower income level, we may be able to assign them to the appropriate income category, but they would not be deed-restricted units in that instance.
Okay, thank you. And then regarding the VMT and the EIR, I appreciate some of the questions asked, and I appreciated the distinction that there's really only one new car per 2 minutes during peak traffic hours. I would love for staff to just comment on the fact that it seems, especially with the general plan finding that we made when we updated the general plan, it seems like we've already kind of, as a commission, as a council, the city has already made the assertion that we understand that it's really hard to meet VMT requirements in Pacifica. This seems like it goes even beyond, like, it seems like we've already analyzed this. Can you just speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Perhaps Ms. Irvin or Ms. Rizzi can speak more about why we packaged a statement of overriding considerations for the project EIR, in addition to the one that was done with the programmatic EIR for the general plan update, and the considerations for that and why it's arguably beneficial in this instance.
Yeah, glad to speak to that. Good evening, Olivia Urban, Principal Environmental Planner. The reason was the timing. When we started this, the general plan had not been certified and updated, so we were teeing up in anticipation that the timeline for this project may not coincide with that, but you're absolutely right. With the acknowledgement and certification of that EIR for the general plan, the city has acknowledged that there is a VMT override for the land uses.
Okay, that makes sense, thank you. And then one more, and this is for, I don't know if a representative from engineering is here. I can also ask BKF, but I'd love to ask Pacifica's engineering team. I'd like to understand if a paper study was done in regards to the sewer, or, you know, if we're going to do a wet study at the 2 nearest manholes. I didn't see it in the conditions of approval, but I know at the back of the valley that that's something that is typically asked for, so I'd love staff to weigh in on that, and then if BKF or the applicant wants to weigh in as well.
Yeah, we have Plant Manager Louis Sun from the Wastewater Division of Public Works here, and we also have Senior Civil Engineer Ray Danginas from the Engineering and Field Services Division of Public Works Department. One or both of them can address your question. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and Commission members. My name is Louis Sun. I'm the wastewater plant manager. To answer your question, the city actually conducted the 2011 sewer master plan. And in that master plan, we identify several CIP projects which would increase our capacity for sewer for the collection system. And those projects were completed back in 2018. We upsized the sewer collection trunk line in Terra Nova Boulevard and also Odsted Boulevard. In terms of plant treatment capacity that was designed about 20 years ago when we built a new treatment plant, and we have sufficient capacity to basically treat the whole city, even if we to build out the entire city to the maximum. So that was part of the original design of the treatment plant. So I hope that answered your question. So we do have sufficient capacity both in collections and in treatment.
That definitely answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the rest of my questions are for the applicant design team. One of the questions is regarding, why don't I go for the mapping ones first? So we talked about the desire to do the project in phases between parcels 2 and 3. Is there any benefit to the school district as the applicant by reserving the right to file multiple maps? Is that something the school district thought about or would like to do?
The question specifically is there a benefit to filing multiple maps?
Yes.
I don't even understand the question.
Maybe a question for your civil engineer.
Yeah, I think I can handle that. I don't think there's a. So the district wants to retain it for condominium.
And then sticking on map emergency quite it's
It is over a portion of the streets. So we work with the fire department to get an EVAE over access to, but it does not encompass the. Because of the turnarounds.
got it. Okay. Side of your plan, it wouldn't need to loop back because right now it looks like you have a 150-foot dead end. If you don't.
That's correct.
I think then that the city would want to, I mean, I would defer this obviously to engineering, but wouldn't the city require an EVA? I mean, the streets look like they're already designed correctly to accomplish this, but I would imagine that we'd want to reserve a new emergency vehicle access easement over this portion that loops back around.
We'd have to run the movements. I don't believe that leaves enough space for the turnaround. That's why it's left as a dead end and it doesn't exceed the 150 foot.
I kind of caught that. Are you saying the dead end does not exceed the 150 feet?
If I may.
Sure.
Are we looking at the turnaround on the trash enclosure to the left, the south side of the plan?
Correct.
Yeah, Tim, who's on the line, may be able to speak to this, but I believe that the hammerhead that's designed there provides the turnaround in lieu of the, so it's not a 150-foot dead end. There's an adequate turnaround space there.
Oh, got it. So there's a hammerhead between buildings B1, 2, and 3, and then in the portion that goes further down.
There's a hammerhead that wraps around that trash enclosure.
Wraps around the trash enclosure. Okay. Is that on one of your sheets?
Yes, it's on civil sheet C7.1, I believe, is the sheet I'm looking at.
Okay. And then while I'm looking at that sheet, it struck me that there weren't public utility easements over the streets. So I don't know if engineering or the design team could speak to that.
The on-site storm will be private, the on-site sewer will be private, and the on-site water will be private. The water will be on the private side of backflow preventers out at Odstad. PG&E we will have to provide easements for PG&E when their services are designed.
Okay.
But my understanding that's not a public easement.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Let me find my questions. So for the architect, on the rendering where there are no trees, where the trees are taken away, it's very perceptible, more perceptible than in the elevations. But between buildings C1 and C2, there's kind of one area that really lacks articulation. And I was wondering if the architect could advise if something could be added in this area to maybe rectify that.
Sure. I do think that in large part, as you can see with the rendering with the trees, these buildings are going to be fairly covered 99% of the time. But I think that we could consider some planter, window box treatments, potentially trellis, something to add kind of buffered articulation if necessary.
I think that would be very nice, because I do think people will be walking on the sidewalk and looking at them as well, not just driving by. So the wood material, it looks very nice. How do you plan to weatherize it?
Just to be clear, the wood material for the trellises?
Trellises, and there's some posts as well that look like they're wood.
I think right now we're planning for the trellises to be a weather-wearing wood such as cedar, and it'll be treated with a stain, so it's naturally resistant to most weather.
Okay. And then the material is noted as comp shingle or asphalt shingle in the staff report and on the drawings, but your renderings show standing seam metal roofs. And so I'm wondering, is that a material that the district is proposing, or did that just make it into the rendering?
I think we are proposing that just for the non-residential amenity buildings to have a higher class roofing that's more public facing. The majority of the roofing would be comp shingle as called out in the plans.
Okay. And then my only other question, and I was very excited to hear Tree City Pacifica supporting the project. So it sounds like there are around 50 new trees that are replacing the one heritage tree that's being removed. Is that correct?
I believe it's correct. I also believe our landscape architect might be on the line if she can speak.
So if the landscape architect's on the line, I think press star 5 to raise your hand.
And Chair Hauser, while we're waiting for the landscape architect, I do want to clarify one point with respect to the applicable regulations. So some of the public commenters alluded to the city's updated tree protection ordinance. However, under the applicable law, due to the Subdivision Map Act and the date that this tentative subdivision map was deemed complete, the applicable regulations are those that were in effect at that time in 2020. And so that was prior to the effective date of the updated tree ordinance. And so this project was evaluated for compliance with the heritage tree ordinance that preceded the current ordinance.
That makes sense.
Caller ending in 0679, you can speak now.
Thank you. This is Leo Farley. I'm with Jet Landscape Architects. Yes, I concur with what he just said. We're adding a significant amount of new trees to mitigate the loss of the few trees that we had to take down, including the heritage.
And could you clarify what size you're planning to provide for the new trees?
For the mitigation trees, we're planning on 24-inch box and 36-inch box trees.
Okay, thank you. That concludes my questions. Anything?
Sure.
Okay.
For the design staff, since I live at a similar distance back in the valley and am a little bit more familiar with the sun patterns back there, I noticed in the drawings in some of the representations that you were contemplating black asphalt roofing. It does get really hot back there on a lot of days. You might want to consider using a different color to make more of that heat radiate away.
I think that's a good comment. I think that, we could consider a more high reflectance comp shingle roofing. Certainly that would be required by California code and a greener alternative as well.
And are you considering using heat pumps and availing yourself of those? Well, I guess you don't really need the tax rebate, but.
I'd have to back check our most recent mechanical plans and plumbing plans to let you know.
Just to try to understand what level of efficiency you're trying to achieve with with your heating and cooling needs.
Shep confirmed it for me. We have utilized heat pumps in the most recent plan.
Very good to hear. Are you planning on putting in security cameras at all?
I think so. While I don't have that design handy, I do believe that it's a key part of any residential development to have security cameras.
And then a quick question for the superintendent. In the event that there was a young lady, I believe, that was speaking to the 800 kids using that field, and I know particularly in the evening time, I do serve on a different youth organization that we do have field space time constraints, particularly in the winter months. Would you be open to allowing people to put temporary portable lights up till 9 p.m., which is about when it gets dusk here in the summertime? Would you be open to making that be a possibility on those fields?
Yeah, I think what we've seen is that we've been very receptive to what the community wants, and so we will be open to that if that's what the community wants, at the same time that serves the neighbors' needs.
I know it's a current use up at Oceana High School during the winter months, and so I'm just trying to look to make sure that even though I'm not part of that organization or a baseball organization, that if kids want to be playing on fields instead of being at the bonfires on the beach, I'm all for it.
Right. We don't currently have lights on any of our fields, and we do have some other fields that are maybe not as residentially based that would also be acceptable uses for light if that was the interest of the community.
Okay, thank you. And just for the record, I'm married to a school teacher. I'm totally in support of this project. I think it's a great thing. Not a teacher in the district, so I don't want you to get the wrong idea that I'm not thankful for what it is that you're trying to put together and what you're trying to do for the community. I think it's important. I think teachers are horribly underpaid, especially for what it is that they do for our community. And I thank you all for doing what you do, recognizing the need and trying to fill it.
Chair Hauser, if I may,
Yes.
I want to clarify that installation of lights, whether permanent or portable, are not a part of this project. The impacts of the lighting at night have not been evaluated in the environmental impact report. So to the extent they may be utilized at the site, that would require further review by the city at some point in time.
Okay, I think we can agree to defer that analysis. So I want to go back to one thing. I did review sheet C 7.0, and I am assuming it's okay that the applicant would be willing to add the center leg of the hammerhead to the EVA. It's not currently in there, but I do see your hammerhead, and it does look like it meets the fire code. So I just want to make sure that the appropriate easement is over the hammerhead.
I think that's appropriate. Can Tim speak to that if he's still on the line?
Yes, we'll look at that and provide the additional leg if it's required.
Okay, thank you. And then I did want to go back to one of the staff requests on vacating the existing right-of-way and easements. Mr. Murdoch, can you confirm that there are not existing easements, or sorry, that there are not existing utilities that are on the property that are currently in use and that should be in use? If we're vacating them with the mapping rather than at the time we're stopping usage, I think we're going to need to make sure that we add a timing consideration to the way we word that.
Yes, Chair Hauser, it may be best for Senior Civil Engineer Denginas to speak about any utilities he's aware of operating on the site and what that coordination piece may be. It's not an issue I'm familiar with.
Good evening, Commissioners. Raymond Dunguines, Senior Civil Engineer. Yes, so the existing subdivision maps, which included the courts, was never built, and therefore the utility easements that was proposed with them, there was no utilities that was built in them. So we're confident that if they are extinguished, there's no utilities in them.
For avoidance of doubt, can you confirm that also applies to the 5-foot easement that fronts Yosemite Drive and Odstad Boulevard?
Well, those utility easements will be retained as part of the new map for the final map. So if there are any easements there, the easements will be retained with the new final map.
So, Mr. Murdoch, are you asking us, again, because this is just all a timing question. I don't want a gap, right? So we're not recommending vacating those things tonight. We're recommending vacating those at the final parcel map, at the time of the final parcel map. Is that correct?
Right, so the vacation wouldn't occur upon whatever action the commission takes tonight, if that was an
Or the
action to
council.
approve the project. That vacation would be subsequent, I think, in simple terms, as you said, at the time of the final map approval and recordation.
Okay, so we would extinguish and replace in kind simultaneously.
That's
Correct,
right,
the
there
ones
wouldn't be a
allowed.
period in
Okay.
time where we didn't have any appropriate utility easements, but yet we would need them for the project to be built.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any deliberation?
We'll add one more quick question. Sorry. In terms of, for the designers, in terms of the exterior lighting and the lamping on that, you're gonna, I hope, go with a relatively high Kelvin lamping, so it's more of a softer white, not that awful bright, white, intense, light polluting light.
I don't think there's anything that would prohibit us from picking a lamp of a softer white, so long as it met the foot candle lighting requirements on site. So we would be happy to look at fixtures that are of that description.
I personally would appreciate it, but it's not for me to decide, but I know that's one of the things that I find very distasteful.
It's my aesthetic preference as well, yeah.
Okay, anyone for deliberation? Commissioner Ferguson.
I would like to note that it's remarkable, this is the largest project I've seen in the 3 and change years I've been here, and I have gotten not one single vitriolic mail or negative comment. So it's a true achievement. I haven't heard any recommendations for additional conditions of approval tonight, so unless you guys have anything else to discuss, I'm happy to make a motion now, or I'll hear other opinions.
I think let's hear from others, and I'll come back to you for a motion.
Great.
And Chair Hauser, I'd benefit an opportunity when you're ready to read back what I have heard from the commission in terms of what that final motion might include as a change to the proposed motion in the staff packet.
Yes, and because I do have 6 things,
Go.
including the 2 that you, so maybe if you want to take it away.
Sure. Let me know if I didn't capture anything correctly or if you have anything to add. So some of these are further minor clarification changes that I didn't announce earlier, but let me just begin to run through them. So I heard the commission discuss changes to add California Department of Fish and Wildlife to the responsible parties in mitigation monitoring and reporting program, mitigation measure Bio 1, and to define the period of the rainy season, I presume consistent with the grading moratorium rainy season in the municipal code, in MMRP mitigation measure Bio 4. A recommendation to vacate any existing city rights-of-way and easements in the project area, including a revision to the development agreement to clarify that all BMR units would be constructed in phase 1 of the project. The applicant, prior to the hearing, did ask regarding condition number 20, so I'll give the commission a moment to get there, but condition number 20, to add, except where a centralized system or systems may be approved by the building official. That condition pertains to photovoltaic systems. The condition of approval was more so standard condition applicable to single-family residences, where each unit would have its own PV system. In this case, the applicants proposed a centralized system on top of the carports, and so staff is supportive of that change if the commission is. Modifying condition of approval number 38, to clarify a typo, it indicates Crespi Drive and it should indicate Odstad Boulevard with respect to sewer lines. I did hear potentially a new condition of approval that the applicant shall add articulation to the facade of building C2, such as a trellis feature, window planter box, or other articulation acceptable to the planning director. And then on sheet C 7.0, ensuring that the applicant shall ensure that the emergency vehicle access easement includes the entirety of the fire access turnaround to the satisfaction of the city engineer and fire chief. And that's all that I captured.
Thank you. I'd like to clarify the last one to say that the vesting tentative map reflect the EVAE consistent with the hammerhead shown on C 7.0. The easement should be shown on the vesting tentative map. And then I'd like to clarify the metal roofs, which were not part of the drawing package, but were part of the renderings. So adding those to sheet A 4.0.
A 4.0?
Yes.
So applicant shall revise the project plans to include standing seam metal roofs on the community amenity buildings?
Yes. Anybody else? No?
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment, generally, I'm happy to see this project, fully support it. I think it would be a great community benefit. Also, I see it as a great economic benefit. Given the location of the project, it's going to have, by the estimates, over 100 new residents to help support Park Mall in the back of the valley, as well as other businesses within Pacifica, whereas if these tenants lived elsewhere, they'd be spending their money elsewhere, whether it's Northern Pacifica or elsewhere in the Bay Area. So the economic benefit's definitely there as well. So overall, I agree with the community comments and as well as my fellow commissioner sentiments on this project. I do have one minor typo I saw in the report as well. On packet page 29, it says basketball hope installation. I think it meant, I had a lot of hope for basketball when I was younger, but I think it meant basketball hoop installation. So just that one typo there too. But yeah, that's my comment. Thank you.
All right.
I have one more quick thing that I'd just like to say is that with all the turnover that we've had in planning staff, I think it's amazing how we were able to pull it together just to be here tonight to make this decision. And I want to say kudos especially to that gentleman sitting over there. And thank you.
I'll just add on, I think this is super cool. Very rarely do I look at a project and look at the architecture and think, wow, this looks great, and not want to change a whole bunch of stuff. So I really commend the design team, and I commend the school district for all of the additional open space and keeping, my son plays soccer on those soccer fields. It's just very cool. You guys did an excellent job. So I'm going to be very happy to support this tonight.
I wanted to also chime in. I grew up in Shenandoah Court, a couple blocks from you, and this has been something that my family has talked about for years. It is so exciting to see this area revitalized. I completely agree with our chair. It is a beautiful looking project. We're so excited that we still have access to the fields. The frontage trees, the fact that you're trying to keep those is important. I think that this is an otherwise very sleepy neighborhood, and it's important to keep a level of privacy, not only for the neighbors, but for the new residents as well. I noticed that with this new designation and new rezoning that you could have built up to 299 units, and the fact that you're keeping it at 70 is incredibly commendable, and I really appreciate that. So thank you so much for the forethought, for the years of work, for your volunteerism, for your enthusiasm, and so happy that I got to be here tonight to support this project.
Commissioner Ferguson?
Your conditions, take it away.
Uh-oh. Now I have to find it.
It's 38.
All right. I will move that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution included as Attachment A to the staff report to certify the final environmental impact report, adopt the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, make the required findings, and approve the statement of overriding considerations. Approve specific plan SP-173-20, vesting tentative map parcel map SUB-248-20, and heritage tree removal authorization subject to conditions of approval as amended. Is that substantial? Okay. In Exhibit A of the resolution, to recommend City Council, I'll say in Exhibit A and Exhibit B of the resolution, since we included the mitigation monitoring reporting plan. To recommend City Council approval of ordinances to approve development agreement DA-3-20, rezoning RZ-205-20, and development plan DP-81-20, and to incorporate all maps, written records, and reports and testimony into the record by reference. Is there a second? Okay, Commissioner Ferguson.
Yeah, I second.
Can we have a vote?
There we go. That motion passes unanimously.
Congratulations. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Moving on to commission communications. Does anyone have a commission communication?
Welcome to the team.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Yes, a warm welcome. And I don't know if you want to give anybody any information about kind of who you are or
Sure. My name is Daniela Devine. I grew up here in Pacifica. I currently am a part owner of a commercial flooring construction firm in San Francisco. Focus a lot on tenant improvement and new builds, and spent many years working for different municipalities for the state of California, University of California, and really excited to serve the city. And got two young boys, 2 and 4 years old, so all the issues that we're discussing, I personally feel invested in, and it's an honor to be here with everybody. So thank you for having me.
welcome.
And we're lucky to have you.
All right, staff communications.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to follow up on Commissioner Wright's remark. Thank you for the kind words, but really it was a complete team effort, as well as a lot of patience from the applicant team, the school district, our CEQA consultants from M Group, our contract planner, Chris Docamus, and many others who I'm forgetting to mention right now. But everyone persisted and made it through a really challenging set of circumstances these last few years to get that important project to this milestone tonight. Additionally, I want to remark about the joint study session with the City Council and the Planning Commission, scheduled for tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers to discuss the housing element update, the draft housing element that's been released for public review and comment. The study session tomorrow will provide an opportunity for the council and commission to provide feedback and input, as well as for the public to come in and comment verbally in addition to the written public comment opportunity. So we certainly encourage everyone to come through and to participate, either in person or via the phone-in option through the dial-in system. And as I said, those all, I forget, sitting right next to me, Karen Murphy from the City Attorney's Office, as well as her colleague, Krishan Chopra, who also were really instrumental in fast turnarounds for all of the items for the school district project. So thank you, Karen.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
You get a second?
Second.
Okay, let's vote. Okay, we are
Motion
adjourned.
passes unanimously.